Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Muppets Wizard of Oz, starring the Muppets we know and love as well as Ashanti, Queen Latifah, Jeffrey Tambor, and David Allen Greer, directed by Kirk R. Thatcher. Now, I've never seen this movie before, and I know it's a ripoff of The Wizard of Oz and somewhat wicked. I'll talk about it. Let's get into the movie. We open the movie in Kansas where Dorothy Gale, played by Ashanti, films a music video while she is working with her Aunt M, and Uncle Henry's diner, while Aunt M, played by Queen Latifah, comes off controlling as Dorothy wants to leave Kansas to go to her audition for the Muppets, and Uncle Henry, played by David Allen Greer, comes off like the fun uncle as he lets Dorothy go to the audition, and she's 5 minutes late as she sees the Muppets driving by and gives them her CD, Boy Do I Feel Old, as they drive away and a storm comes in while Dorothy walks home. And this beginning sort of had nothing to do with the original Wizard of Oz, as I get they're trying to do something completely different, which is cool. And all as the I don't like the human characters as they're coming off a little too much. And I usually like Queen Latifah in things, as I've seen her in as this is the second thing I have seen Ashanti in. At first, as the first one is for teenagers called John Tucker Must Die. Not what you think. It's a romantic comedy. And I'm not a David Allen Greer fan in general, as he's been in forgettable things in my opinion, as he bugs me. Dorothy goes inside the house for her pet bug Toto, who, when they get into the world of Oz, is portrayed by Pepe. And last time he wasn't relatable, and still the case with this movie, as some rats led by Rizzle the Rat, or as they're called Munchkins in the world of Oz, and the Wicked Witch of the East, who's portrayed by the lovely Miss Piggy, is dead, and they hear her, and Dorothy tries to help her until she actually dies, and another fairy happens to be her sister, who's also portrayed, excuse me, as she portrays three different characters in this whole movie. And Dorothy explains how much it was an accident, as the sister is actually a singer. And this scene is pretty dreadful, while Miss Piggy tries to give Dorothy some powerful high-heeled shoes, as she explains to Dorothy how powerful they are, and the Munchkins give her a rescue offer by singing to the rescue and warn Dorothy about the Wicked Witch of the West. And so far, this is a little worse than last time with Muppets from Space, in my opinion. Pepe climbs on the crops, and he sees with Dorothy a scarecrow being portrayed by Kermit the Frog, as he's getting poked by a crow and he has no brain like in the Wizard of Oz, as she gets him down and takes him with Pepe and herself to meet the Wizard of Oz, while they get encountered by the Tin Man, portrayed by the great Gonzo, as he's in love with a chicken named Camilla, which is always the truth. Come on. As we have met her before in the previous Muppet movies. And the Wicked Witch turns Gonzo into a Tin Man because they have no hearts, as Gonzo has one before he turned it into a Tin Man and decides to go with him. And this movie is sometimes going to go to the cringy and crude humor routes, which isn't really necessary for a Muppet movie, as Dorothy wants to sit down because of her shoes killing her feet, while the Cowardly Lion, portrayed by Fozzie Bear, as some bunny comes in, and some bunny rabbits are spies around the area, and Dorothy tries to tell Fozzie to tell a joke as he has stage fright, which is normal. While this is filmed poorly, as the songs don't feel like the songs in The Wizard of Oz, or Wicked for that matter, while the Muppets are fine in my opinion, but not the best thing about the movie. They sing about their dramatic moment in their lives, as they sing about what our friends for, and they bump into the elderly hecklers from the show of The Muppet Show to torment Fozzie, while Gonzo helps them out with leaving them while their others easily walk by them. And they go in a place where they smell some flowers that are poisonous and knock them out, as they stay there forever until Kermit and Gonzo make Pepe say something about calling the Munchkins, and the puppet movements were awful to look at. They call the Munchkins and wake up Dorothy, Pepe, and Fozzie as they get closer to Emerald City and to Oz and get to the door where Sam the Eagle is the guard of the Wizard of Oz. And Pepe tells Sam something in his ear, as we'll never hear it, and they get inside and meet Scooter the Gopher, as we see the Muppet Scientist and Beaker, and they wear special glasses to meet the wizard, but beforehand, they go in this movie in the Maple Machine and makes Dorothy look like Kelly Osbourne at first, but they want her to look like Ashanti, as she looked while playing the character. And the wizard meets our heroes at one at a time, starting with Fozzie, and asks him for courage, but puts him in the trash pile. Kermit's second, as he wants to a brain until he gets down. Gonzo asks for a heart until he gets down. And Dorothy asks for a career in singing, and he asks for the Wicked Witch's magic eyeball, and goes down, and Pepe comes in last, and he goes down anyways, and the effects in this look terrible, as this movie is repetitive. They go to a mountain to find the Wicked Witch of the West's magic eyeball, and they're scared about it, while the Wicked Witch of the West watches them, as she's portrayed for the last character by Miss Piggy. And she sees Dorothy has the shoes, and she sends in the flying monkeys, and I'm not convinced by the evil version of Miss Piggy when she appears with the flying monkeys on their motorcycle. That looks bad. And Miss Piggy and Dorothy talk trash to each other, and the band with animals sing as a bad guy's song, and this is getting pretty pretentious. The Wicked Witch of the West captures Dorothy, Pepe, and Fozzie, while Kermit and Gonzo is ripped apart, and they get back to the Wicked Witch's place as she tortures Dorothy and Pepe, while Fozzie tells the flying monkeys a joke, as well as a special trick in which makes Fozzie escape, while the flying monkeys were dumb enough to fall for that trick, and gets to the Wicked Witch's tower to save Dorothy and Pepe, and Pepe calls for help from the Munchkins as they get a bad guy's tickled, as he's ticklish, which was comedic in the wrong way. Miss Piggy fights Dorothy until we get a brief interruption by Quentin Tarantino as a cameo meeting with Kermit, and he gives him the wrong impression for a family film, and that scene was poor. And we get back to the point as Dorothy kicks Miss Piggy in the face and into the water, and she melts to death like the Wicked Witch of the West melts from water in The Wizard of Oz. And Dorothy grabs her magical eye, and the flying monkeys are happy they're free from the Wicked Witch's curse. And they get Kermit and Gonzo as the flying monkeys put them back together, and we go back to Emerald City to meet the wizards, as it looks like a soundstage. And he opens the door as it's played by Jeffrey Tambor. And this is another wasted performance, as this is the worst way to use him, whereas last time I was embarrassed for him. Now it's gotten worse as far as my opinion is concerned, as he's portrayed by an actor from Hollywood, as he's a stinking fraud, as that was completely disappointing, and I'm very disappointed in this movie at this point. The wizard needs 2 hours to get everyone what they wanted, as they have heard Dorothy sing once yet, and they haven't heard it, and they get to the ceremony, and this is when I see the wizard as a fraud, as he gives Fozzie courage by giving him a golden microphone, Gonzo a piece of Valentine's hard candy, as well as getting Camilla back, and Kermit that looks like a brain that looks like a cereal, like cornflakes, for example. And Dorothy comes out as she sings, and she knows he's a fraud, and she tells them already have those things without the magic of the Wizard of Oz, as that was a pointless adventure from the Muppets, as the wizard tells them to go back to where they started in the beginning of the movie, as they get back and see the good witch of the South named Glinda, as they meet her while she meets Kermit and tells Dorothy to say goodbye to her friends and tap her feet with her shoes 3 times and wishes to take her home in Kansas. And she gets back home and gets to the diner and chats with Aunt Em, and Uncle Henry after the storm has passed. And she says she never wants to leave home ever again, and sees Kermit in the diner as they want to hire her, but she says no, as Criven understands, and while Aunt M, says go for her dreams, and Aunt M says Dorothy will always be home with them. And Dorothy sings for the Muppets, and Aunt M and Uncle Henry sees Dorothy on the TV and are proud of her. And the climax was not that great, as this feels like the pits. But well, how much of this movie was the pits? Let's go to the rating and find out. I'll give this movie a 3.2 out of 10. This is a little worse than Muppets from Space, as I don't like nor relate with the human characters, as the Muppets were fine in this movie, in my opinion, as this feels worse than Muppets from Space, as this felt like it was made for TV, as it was a TV movie and it's shot like one, and this is filmed poorly, and the songs are not as good as the other Muppet movies. The Wizard of Oz and Wicked, which I will review for both Oscar bait in the weeks to come, and I'll get to the original Wizard of Oz at some point. The puppet movements were awful to look at, while the cameo by Quentin Tarantino was poor, while it gets repetitive at times. And this is the worst way to use Jeffrey Tambor. And the effects are terrible. Is this the best of the Muppets? Is this the best the Muppets can do for now, until we get another movie in 2011? As this feels like the pits. I'm not convinced by the evil Miss Piggy plays, as she played 3 different characters in this movie, as this movie is pretty pretentious, as this series needs a new movie until we get to 2011, as this is a non-recommendation for this TV movie, but it makes me sad to dislike another Muppet movie, but I can't recommend this version of the Muppets, nor The Wizard of Oz, as I'll get to the original movie when I can, as well as Wicked for Oscar bait purposes for this year, but for now, this didn't work for me, as the adventure with them was pointless. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with the 2011 Muppet movie. And until then, gimme